Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hi everyone and welcome to On the House, the Household Management Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Gabriella Joustra, coming to you from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's begin. Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to be discussing how to navigate sustainable cloth care for households with Vanessa Mardirossian, who is a textile designer as well as a PhD candidate and a public scholar at Concordia University. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here today.
Yes, thank you. Before we get going, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and, how you got into this area.
So first, I'm a textile designer and I've been working in the fashion industry for over 20 years in Europe. I come from France and I live in Montreal, Canada for 15 years now. So I've been working in all sectors of fashion, in haute couture for Christian Lacroix, Chanel, in ready-to-wear for Kenzo, Louis Vuitton, in fast fashion also, as well as trend studios for Nelly Rodi in Paris. I come from Nice, south of France, and I live in Montreal with my husband and 3 kids, 21, 15, and 12 years old.
Yeah. I was going to say that very, very impressive background in fashion, I think. Also, how did you get from Nice to Montreal?
It was really about adventure. With my husband, we met in London, in England, and he's Colombian from South America. So we thought it was a nice way, to be in between South America and Europe, being in North America. And also we like, cosmopolitan cities, like where we can speak half English, half French. So we like that.
Sounds perfect. And how did you get into, a bit more of an academic area?
So after having worked in the fashion industry for 20 years, I really wanted to say I was ready to teach. I really want to teach future fashion designer, textile designers, and transmit all my knowledge about my career. And when I started to teach, I was interested in going deeper into this textile toxicity I was hearing about. And especially about dyes, because I'm working with dyes for so many years. So I decided to start a PhD where I could investigate further and really link textile design, chemistry, and environmental health.
That's very interesting. And I think, recently we've had a bit more understanding, I think, of how bad for the environment the textile industry can be. But, I don't know if we've had as much research. So it's really great to see that you're getting into that after being in the fashion industry. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we're going to do a section called Have You Met Vanessa, where we get to know you through some of your favorite things. The first thing I'd like to know is, what is your favorite book?
So that's a huge question because I don't have a favorite book, but I have many, many books I love to read. My favorite places are libraries or secondhand bookshops. And it depends, I have maybe 10 books next to my bed and I read according to what I'm going through. Like, for example, when I started to become a scholar, being in academia, with high levels of expectation in terms of writing and studying. So I became quite stressed. So I was reading a lot about the stress and why I'm feeling like that, trying to understand. But I also like really novels. Like, for example, Agnès Martin-Lugan and the book Happy People Read and Drink Coffee. So this is like relax.
That sounds exactly like me. I hope that I'm happy.
Yeah.
I don't know. And do you have a role model?
Oh, actually, I really like simple people that don't speak much but act a lot. So I'm thinking of Pierre Rabhi, for example, who was always promoting happy sobriety, how to be happy without always expecting to have more and more and more. I also think of Cyril Dion, the realizer of the documentary Tomorrow, when he was going to meet a small initiative in the world with people doing something, to make a change, like don't like to see big, obvious people, but like rather inspiring initiatives. Who else? I don't know, like on the personal level, I admire my grandmother because thanks to her, I've been into cooking and I'm transmitting that to my kids today.
Cooking is such an important life skill. And I think, sometimes you can lose it, particularly if maybe one parent does all the cooking and doesn't really teach it. So it's great to see that you're passing it on to the next generation.
Oh, yeah. Everyone cooks at home.
Good. And have you completed any courses that have inspired you?
It's not really a course. It's rather a program. I was doing in Paris. It's called the DSAA, Diplôme Supérieur d'Art Appliqué in Fashion and Environment. So what I liked about that, I was talking about multidisciplinarity, people coming from different area and nationality. In this program, we were given a thematic, or a question, like, for example, if you were a door, for example. So I was mixing with all these other students from different backgrounds. I was in fashion design, but I had some in product design, in graphic design. So with the same question, if I was a door, for example, everyone had to answer from their own thematics or project. At that time, I was working on skin, and the door I proposed, it was a kind of hole in an elastic piece of fabric, and we could get through this door by, having this fabric opening and closing like the pore of the skin. So there is all this work of working conceptual ideas and also sharing which doors each students, was thinking about according to their own background. So it was really inspiring.
It's so fascinating that people would have different ideas of how to do things just based on, I guess what their background is. I mean, it makes sense, but also for me personally, I think I tend to forget that other people have different life experiences from me. So so I forget that people think differently from me. So it's really great to see that you are being able to get together with people from different disciplines and share things, share experiences, and share ideas.
Yeah, and what is important also to see is how people creatively think, because when you're studying design, you're scared to don't have ideas or to forget to have ideas, or maybe one day you won't have any more ideas. And to see how people generate ideas, is an aspiration still, it's been 30 years now, and I'm still using this way of approaching my project.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to start our episodes with a bit of a definition. And today we're going to be talk about caring for, clothing, cloth, but in a more sustainable manner. So, let's start off with something very broad. How do you define household management?
From me, automatically I connect it to clothing because this is my topics, my specialty. I know it entails more than that, but the first idea is about how to take care of clothing, how to purchase your clothing, how you tidy, how you order, how do you, everything about clothing, and most of it, how you care for it.
I think that clothing is a very important part of household management, because without clothing, we're just naked and cold or sunburned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it's our washing machine broke the other week, and it was so annoying having to take extra time out of my day to take all the laundry, to go to the laundromat, wash it there, dry it there, and take it back. And it really brought home to me how easy it is to do it when you do have a washing machine. But I'm assuming that, I guess, we're looking at sustainability as well as cloth care. So how does sustainability, I guess, merge in with caring for our clothing?
Well, at different levels. Like first, choosing what you buy. So when you choose, a way of choosing is, of course, to look at the etiquette, what is it made of, why is it made. Before to be concerned about the toxicity of clothing, I didn't really pay much attention to that. And then I realized that more than 70 or 80% of my wardrobe was made of polyester. Then when I became, more conscious about all this toxicity and the effect it has on the environment and on health, I started to cut buying polyester. Unless, I have no choice. Like, for example, still my ski pants are made of polyester. For outwear, when you have to, it's okay. But to wear something, especially, in the night, some pajamas now are even made of polyester, which is plastic, basically. So first, is how you buy. Sourcing, the kind of clothing. Sourcing, the kind of materials, fibers. So I choose natural fibers. Then, is how I take care of it. Like I always wash, cold water, 30 degrees. And I'm very picky about, the color aspect of the clothing. So I really separate all the white, all the dark, and all the warm colors. I have 3 different packs, and I wash, together, because otherwise, it impacts the color. Like the yellow are not as bright, the white become grayish. So this is a way to take care of it, and also not use too much the tumble dryer, and rather, drying with the air.
Okay.
So this is, I don't know if I forget something, like buying, taking care of it, and also, the relation you have to the clothing, don't buy for a short time, but buy, I like to buy something good, even if I pay, more. But I like to buy it to last, and then pass it through. I don't like to buy and then just for one night or one event. Like I've never been like that, even when it wasn't that fashionable. That popular dress. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we've gone in some ways. At least this is my experience noticing what's been happening is people are either buying clothes to wear for once, and it's become such a big thing to buy and buy and buy. And then there's the other side, which is also happening at the same time, which is people who are thinking more about their clothing and buying quality and buying to use over multiple events. And I feel like we've got 2 streams of thought happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Also, maybe it's a question, where when you're born, like I see my parents, for example, from, the baby boomers, they always bought so much stuff that, I was anxious to see so many pair of shoes, so many tops, so I felt like, oh my God, it's overwhelming for me. So I was always buying not much and buying what I really cares about.
Yeah, great. I think that's definitely something that we should be embracing. So if it's okay, I would like to go into those sections that you've talked about in a bit more detail. So starting off with buying clothing, so you mentioned buying natural fibers over polyester, and also about, how bad for the environment. Actually, let's just start off with, how do you choose garments? So we've already said that something like polyester is made of plastic. Why isn't it as good as a natural fiber?
Mm-hmm. It's because polyester is made from petrochemicals compounds, oil basically. So it started, in the 1941 exactly to make polyester. around the Second World War. And then it became very popular because it was really cheap to make. And it's why most of the fast fashion is made of polyester or mixed fibers, which are really bad also, for recycling. It's very hard to separate the cotton from the polyester, for example. Many researchers are undergoing this to be able to separate and be able to recycle, because for now, only 1% of the clothing are recycled into new clothing. So most of it, like if it's not good enough, if the quality is not good enough to be resold, then it's finishing, like burning or burning and polluting, the soil and the air. So this is the first reason. Polyester is from oil. It's also when you wear it and when you wash it, is leaching some microfibers that finishes in the water, in the ocean, and mixed with the sediments of water. And there is always a circular, a circular aspect in this. And like, for example, if I can give a reference to our auditors, is Ellen MacArthur Foundation. She did a very good report in 2017, like with nice pictures. You see visually at every stage of the clothing production, there is an impact. So to be able 100% sustainable is not possible. So you have to choose where you can be sustainable. Of course, you want to choose the maximum, the steps, but zero impact doesn't exist. So you can just minimize the impact. So this shading of polyester is a big issue. Even, builders of washing machine are working these days to be able to catch them. And the brand Patagonia, is one of the pioneering sustainable sportswear brand, designed a bag, to be able to catch these microfibers before they go to the water. So like many different details why polyester is not good. Mm-hmm. Plus, because it's plastic, so you're sweating, and then maybe you notice, but you don't smell as good. When you wear cotton or natural fibers, you don't sweat as much, or it doesn't smell that bad. So
I was going to say that a couple of years ago, I did decide to stop wearing as much polyester, partly for environmental reasons, but also partly because I just found it very uncomfortable. It doesn't breathe as much. I was very sweaty all the time. But going to a more natural route has been, maybe a bit more complicated than just throwing out all my polyester clothes and buying some new clothes, because there's so many different, names for different materials. Sometimes we don't know if they are natural or not. So do you mind talking a bit more about natural fibers?
Yeah, sure. It's not because it's natural that it's better. Because, for example, cotton, which is the second fiber the most used in the world, have many problematics, because they use a lot of pesticides to grow, a lot of water to grow also. So, for example, like 4 to 6% of the lands are used to grow cottons, and a quarter of the pesticide in the world are used on cotton. So this is a huge impact. Of course, we have the alternative of organic cotton. The organic cotton is only 1% for now of the production. And even if we want to increase this production, because big brands, wants to show that they are doing something towards this ecological transition, but there is not enough, to produce comparing to the quantity the market expects. So it's now that we have to consider the degrowth, and decelerating the production and producing less, because we cannot, the ground, the natural world cannot follow the speed of what we need and what we produce. So any special topics has its own little problematics.
Mm-hmm. So it's not just the growing of the cotton, it's how much we're growing. It's not how we're growing the cotton, it's how much cotton we're growing. That's both are problems, but they're both interconnected, I guess.
Yes, because for example, for traditional cotton, the problem with pesticide is huge. And then with organic cotton, the problem of producing as many as you want, because the land, has a rhythm. It has to grow. It has to, to mature. So it's quite difficult. Also, if you want to know more about natural fibers, there is linen. Linen and hemp. They are the two most natural or ecological fibers, because they don't need that much water and they grow quite fast. So it's why these days you see a lot of linen everywhere, because they become popular, because, like on the cycle analysis, they have a good compromise with sustainability.
Mm-hmm. And what about materials like rayon or tencel?
Mm-hmm.
I believe they're partly natural.
Yeah, rayon and tencel are called what we are calling artificial fibers. So we have natural, artificial, and synthetics. All the synthetics are made from oil. Usually they are the poly, but even the nylon is made from oil. While the artificial fibers like rayon, and which is called viscose too in English, maybe rayon, viscose, and tencel, they are made from cellulosic fibers. But the problem with these fibers is the transformation into fiber, which is very toxic. So there are many different documentaries these days showing that the toxicity of the process and also the pollution it causes around the communities surrounding these factories in India or Bangladesh, for example.
Yeah, so I guess in that way, something like linen and hemp are the most environmentally friendly because, as you said, they require less water and less time to grow, but also because they don't require as much intensive manufacturing to become a product. That's exactly. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. They require a lot of work, because the fiber has to be, there are many different steps, but we don't need this toxic solvent used to make rayon, for example.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but I mean, I've always seen linen as a more expensive fabric than something like cotton or rayon or even polyester. I'm guessing that part of it is that if you buy less clothes, you can afford to spend a bit more on the clothes that you buy. But are there any other ways that you can, make, when you do need to purchase clothing, are there any tips or tricks as to how to get the most out of your clothing when you're buying something more expensive?
Mm-hmm. But first you can buy new, but you can also buy secondhand. And this is a big trend growing up these days. And I'm into that trend, actually, because after reading so much about the textile toxicity, I read that a good choice was to buy secondhand, because after all this washing, most of the toxicity has gone by the time you purchase it. So, of course, when you buy a piece of clothing, like cheap or not cheap, doesn't matter. You have to wash it before to wear it to get rid of all this product. And also, when the fabric or the clothing is traveling for so long, there are some anti-fungus products, in these boxes to keep it, away from moisturized fungus. Yeah. Moisturize, not moisturizing, but
mold.
Yes, mold. Exactly. Yes, mold. So this is very important to wash your clothing to get rid of all these synthetic molecules. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. Because I do wash my clothes before after I buy them, because I just think about all the hands that have touched the clothing before I've purchased it. But I was wondering whether it was, good for the clothing to be washed before I've even worn it.
Oh, yes. It's good. I mean, it's mostly good for your health, Mm-hmm. So if you wash it gently, there is no problem for the clothing, so I really advise to wash cold and to wash with a simple soap, and then hang it to dry. So this is the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. The other day, for example, and I talk a lot about dyes, and I'm very concerned about that. I had this pair of jeans, and they were quite dark. I washed them, already. I washed them, and I was just talking and doing something like that on my legs, and after I started to be blue on my hands, and I said, oh my God, I have what's wrong with me? Like my circulation is not good. And then I washed my hand, and it was the dye. So
wow.
There is really like when we wear clothes, our skin is the biggest organ on the body, and it's very porous. So there is really an interconnection, interaction between what we wear and the organism through the skin, through the pores, and through sweats. Scientific studies showed that the molecules from the fabric can enter the skin.
So what can happen to us if those molecules enter our skin?
Okay, so this is very a complex topic. We are entering into environmental health, and environmental health is struggling because it's very difficult to point out the causal effect, because this problematic takes years, even decades to rise up. For example, in 1978 in United States, there is Arlen Bloom, a physician, a biologist, who discovered that the babies wearing pajamas with PFCA inside, this under the fire product, was found in their urine in the following morning. So, it was a way to see that these molecules are traveling through the body. Then you have different kind of molecules. So when we talk about synthetic dyes, we talk a lot about azo dyes. For example, you may have heard of azo dyes.
No.
So there are different kinds of dyes according to the fibers you dye. Like, for example, the dispersive dyes, from whom azo dyes are part of, are really used to dye synthetic fibers. And these dyes are really a big concern because they have some mutagenic, carcinogenic, reprotoxic and neurotoxic compounds that can, enter the bodies. And then, so I was starting my PhD, I started to dig into this science aspect that I didn't know as a designer. So I did fashion and a lecture study with a chemist, and then a lecture study with an environmental health researcher. So the first part, I was really analyzing the samples of dyed fabric with synthetic dyes and natural dyes through liquid chromatography, big machines that can tell you, list all the dyes, all the molecules inside, which is very complex because there are many, but we found out some carcinogenic dyes. Then, during my reading story and my reading study with the environmental health researcher, she was explaining me the process of cancer, for example, how a cancer starts. And if I can schematize, like we are made of billions of cells, and every hours, every minute, they are dying and renewing, like this is a very complex system. And when these toxic compounds enter in contact with the cells, it creates mistakes. So it means that the mistakes can be duplicated. So there are also, because the body and nature is very well done, there are some checkup points where this checkup spot the mistake and repair. But sometimes, when there are so many mistakes, the checkup points start to miss one mistake, and then the replication of these mistakes started to become a tumor. And there's this cell, instead of dying, with that we call the apoptose, becomes very technical, but I learned that from them. The cell doesn't die anymore. It becomes, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the tumor is starting, and then the cancer. And then when some malign mistakes, are living apart, it becomes the metastasis, So this is, and this takes, as I said, like years or decades to develop. But what we noticed from the beginning, because the synthetic dyes started in the middle 19th century, 1856 exactly, when the first synthetic dyes was made by Perkins, a young chemist who was working on discovering a medicine for malaria. He found, he was working with aniline from a petrochemical. And then the reaction made a purple, and it was the first ever made synthetic color. But we realized from the beginning that it was dangerous. But it's like, we make often the comparison with the tobacco industry. We know it's dangerous. We know there is a problem, but still, 50 years later, we still carry on with that. Today, the problem with all this fast fashion since the 60s, because the fast fashion started with Zara. I don't know if you know the story about fast fashion, but it started in the 60s with a Spanish designer that wanted, to give access to designers' clothing for everyone, which was a good idea at the beginning. But, to be able to produce that much with these synthetic dyes that from the beginning had a problem of toxicity makes enlarge the problem. And then all this, we see, you probably saw the True Cost, the documentary, The True Cost. Have you seen it?
Oh, I think I have actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see all this river where people are saying, we know the color of the next strand because of the color of the river. So, it becomes a huge problem because the water in Bangladesh, in China, is the same water in the world. And it's the same water we keep washing and cleaning. But because these persistent dyes are so persistent, we cannot get rid of them. And they stay in the drinking water, they enter the food chain. And then, there is more and more cancer. It's not only about the textile toxicity, but textile toxicity is a huge actor in this chain, polluting chain of water and air.
So by buying clothes that are made with these dyes, we're not just, I guess, harming ourselves by wearing the clothes, but we're also harming the environment because the production is leaching all these chemicals into the water, and the water goes, it goes into the plants, it goes into us, and that's causing cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And I don't want to make people think, oh my God, I cannot wear my clothes because I'm going to get cancer. No, because cancer is much complex than that. So one part is genetic. Like maybe I think it's 7% is genetic, 93% is the way we live, what we eat, what we breathe, what we wear, what we, how stressed we are. So it's a mix of factors. But, the more we try to minimize the stress and the oxidation of the cells, better we navigate, healthy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you've mentioned a few ways to, I guess number one is reduce our purchasing of clothes, because then we're reducing the amount of pollution that we're creating. And then secondly is to, when you have to purchase, try and purchase as much as possible natural fibers with low impact. And then you've mentioned things like, washing our clothes with cold water, trying not to use a tumble dryer. Are there any more methods, anything else that we can do to, I guess, both protect ourselves and protect the environment and protect our clothing?
There is something else we didn't really address, but it's the dyeing of the clothes, even if it's natural. Even if you buy for, cotton, organic cotton, we still don't know what is in the ingredients of the dyes, Like it can be organic cotton, God certifies, but still, having some nebulous ingredients in the dyes that we don't know about. So through my research, I do a lot of interviews with natural dyes experts, but also with eco-labels like Ecotex, to understand what are they looking for, which kind of, what they look when they have to give an eco-label, what they look at. And I cannot tell more about that today because I'm going to have my interview next week. So I'm really in the process of, getting some information to finish. And I hope my wish and I aim for my thesis to be a guide of best practices. And I aim to finish it at the end of 2024. So,
well, I very much look forward to reading it. Maybe if you send us an email when it's done, and maybe you can give it to our listeners. I'm not sure how we'll do that, but we'll certainly try to. So basically, what I was thinking about was, when we look at our clothing, it does have a little label that says, what fabric what it's made of, but it actually doesn't tell us what dye is in there. Whereas if you look at our food, it's very comprehensive. It's not just what it's made of, but what additives have been put into there to make it last longer. Do you think that we should have more information about things like what dyes have been used?
Yes, definitely. And there is this recent movie called Fashion Reimagined. It's very hard to say for French. Fashion Reimagined. Do you understand this word?
Reimagined?
Yes, reimagined. Fashion Reimagined. And it's about a designer in UK who wants to be transparent about the sourcing of her material. And she's showing the process, okay, where is my fiber coming from? And then she's going there. She's going to Turkey. She's going to I don't know where in South America to see, how it grows, how it's made of. And she's choosing, I think she's choosing linen and wool, 2 fibers. And she expressed really how difficult it is to get the sourcing, because every step is made in different, factories, even countries. So it's traveling a lot. So we need to have this information on the tags for people to be able to purchase consciously, and say, okay, I know what I buy, and be able to say, okay, maybe this is a bit more expensive, but this expensive doesn't cost the planet, So this is all this discourse. Like, it looks cheap, but because the environmental cost is externalized.
And I imagine as well that people don't really have time to, if it's not on the label, people don't have time to search every pair of sock that they buy to make sure that it's coming from, it's been responsibly sourced and created. So having that information on the label and really transparent is so great, because it makes it so much easier for people to be able to purchase consciously.
Yeah, actually, I have some students that I know, and because I'm teaching also, I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm teaching at the École supérieure de mode de l'Université de Québec à Montréal. I'm teaching students in fashion, and one of the MA students did her project on a tag, like the food system, like in Europe. I don't know in Australia, but in Europe is A, B, C, A to E, and then giving like a direction to the consumer to be, okay, shall I buy A? It's expensive, but it doesn't have that many impact, or E, that is really cheap, but I have so many impact. So this is a very good, indicator.
Mm-hmm. So one of your students is looking at producing a labeling system for clothing like that.
Yeah, and I did because this is another long story, but I try to make it short. In my inspirations from my thesis, I have some models that I follow, very inspiring. There is, for example, the fiber shed model. You probably know fiber shed. No.
Do you mind explaining?
No, so I explain. It's a concept that was born in the 2010s in California from a woman, like a dyer, designer in textiles, Rebecca Borges, who decided to give herself a challenge. Okay, within a year, I will buy only clothing made from 200 kilometers around where I live. So she started, to map every producer's, dyers, makers, sewers, to be able to meet the challenge. And then she built a model, and she published a book that was, maybe, after I can share some references for the auditors if if you want, I can give a list of books if they want to go further. But she made a model, and now this model is followed in 60 regions in the world. And in May 2022, Fibershed Quebec was born in Montreal from the then director of the École Supérieure de Mode, the l'UQAM, where I teach. And I'm part of this story, I'm participating. So for me, it's an excellent opportunity to apply this theory into practice. So, we do a bit the same. The model is to be, okay, who do we have in Quebec that is able to grow the fibers, to cut, to dye, to sew. And every region, has to do this little exercise because we lost the knowing, we lost the know-how, we lost the machineries because all the production went so far away from us, like to Asia mostly. So we need to be able to relearn how to make, stuff. And also many designers and researchers today are talking about a re-industrialization, a local and re-industrialization, but not a dirty one, a clean one. It's part of our little ecosystem. We live around, so the water that is going to go out from the factory has to be clean. It's a kind of system. When I started to study color, the molecular aspect of color, and now I have this microvision, very systemic view of everything that, entails and interconnects a different discipline. Design, of course, but also environmental health, chemistry, ecology, but also politics and economics, because every expertise has to have an angle to approach this problematic, to be able to progress or to change.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And I think that we would care more about our environment if it's like our direct environment, if we're being directly affected by like dyes going into our waterways.
Exactly. Yeah. I give you a small example. Like you see in the news, for example, there is a strike of rubbish, in the city. Far from here, no, it's not nice. It's a strike. It smells bad and everything. But when the strike is happening in front of your house, then, you go out and you start to be active and to defend what is your surrounding. So we are like that. When it's far away from us, of course we find it terrible, but it's not as awful that when we feel directly concerned about the problematic. We smell, we see, so there is something to do, and we become more into action.
Mm-hmm. So you've been explaining how, so trying to have this new model where we try to produce clothes within 200 kilometers of where we live, which I think I can't. I was trying to imagine how I would do that in Melbourne. And I think that I could probably do it, but that's because I am a bit crafty and I can knit. So I think I could figure out how to do it, but I don't know if other people would have to learn a whole new skill to do that. So I think that that'd be very challenging because everything I know comes from overseas. It's been dyed overseas, produced overseas. And we saw this problem during COVID where we had some things in Australia, but we didn't have the manufacturing capabilities to finish creating something. So yeah, I think it's not just great for the environment, but it's also great because it means that we are more self-sufficient in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm. Yeah. And, it's not about like making our own clothes, but it's okay, within my country, what can be done? Yeah. From A to Z. Mm-hmm. Just asking the question is already a step, toward the progress.
Mm-hmm. And if we want to take the next step, do you know what that is?
The next step, in which aspect?
I guess if we already know that that this is a problem, that all of our clothing is produced in different parts of the world, is the next step just doing research and finding clothes that we can purchase nearby?
Yeah. of course, nearby there is not traveling that much. I know in Australia it's more difficult, but it's about like I said, there are many little questions. I say, okay, what do I want to prioritize? Do I want to prioritize natural fibers? Do I want it to have an eco label? Like Ecotex or God certified? Do I have a brand that I know is not greenwashing, but is really doing what they say and say what they do? Like this kind of thing you have to look at, like really building a trust with the brand, you're following. And this would show the brands that are not doing a good job, that they have to stop, not only greenwashing, but acting, because people becoming more and more, consumers becoming more and more conscious, look deeper in what it means to be more sustainable.
Okay. So yeah, being more involved in the process of buying, like when you are buying, doing the research and knowing what everything means.
Mm-hmm.
So we've discussed a bit about what we can do, in terms of, buying more locally and sustainably, and, prioritizing if you want to buy more natural fibers or all of that things. But what are some things that we can do in our own homes to be a bit more sustainable? So, let's say DIY. Yes,
you can, for example, make your own soap to wash your clothing, which is very, very easy. I don't know in Australia, but in Canada, we have these shops, where you can make your own soap, your own cosmetics, and your own candles, So once again, we were mentioning being able to know how to make clothes, how to make, it gives some self-confidence, it gives some, we feel like we know something. It's the same, it's very easy to make our own soap from Savon de Marseille flakes. You can buy the eSyn kit mixing with, like three ingredients. You find it very easily on internet, and making your own soap to wash our clothes, and it's cheaper, and what is inside of it, like when you do your own cooking.
Yeah, that's true. I do think, sometimes when I'm cooking something, I'm like, I know exactly what's in this and why it's good for me. Whereas when you go to a restaurant, you don't always know what's in the food and whether it's good for you or not. And it's the same, with soap. Like, actually, when I'm cleaning in my home, I use vinegar to do some things, because I'm like, if it's okay for me to eat, then it's fine for me to spray in the air.
Exactly. And I have the same thing as you, when I dye, I like to use a thing I can eat, to mordant the fabric, mordant, you have to prepare the fiber before to dye it, for the dye, the pigment, to be very solid on the fiber. And I use alum, which is the, aluminum salt that we use to make pickles.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, also the pomegranate, because I use a lot of food waste in my dyeing. Pomegranate skin also is a good mordant, to catch some colors. So I think I have the same way of approaching.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have a slight diversion into dyeing, because I'm very interested in this. With pomegranate, is it that you're trying to give it that pink color as well, or using different part of the pomegranate to dye?
Yeah. Sorry. No, I just use the skin. So just use the waste of the food too. But then when I interview this natural dye expert, also, they use, it's well known for years and years that pomegranate have this, you can dye with pomegranate. You won't get a pink, but it's more yellowish. And it can also help to fix the color.
Ah, interesting. What are some other foods that we can both eat and also use to dye our clothes?
I use avocado, for example, just, the skin and the pits of the avocado. So it gives a beautiful pink. And then you can play, with a bit of iron. For example, if you put some rusty nails in vinegar, you put a drop of this called iron liquor in your dye bath, and then your pink is becoming a bit darker, so you can play with different shades within the same with the same food waste. Also, I love to dye with onion skins because you get some beautiful yellow, oranges, and when you mix with a bit of iron, you get some beautiful grain khakis, So it's quite fun to play with. You can do it at home. You can dye your t-shirts or your bed linens, It's quite solid.
Yeah, thank you. And that's definitely DIY because, if you've got some clothes at home that maybe you're a bit bored of, you can freshen it up with some color.
Of course. And there are many tutorials on internet, to dye with food waste. So this is fun to do.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I've been meaning to give it a go, but it is a bit scary, I think.
No, this is really fun. Yeah, it's really fun. And
okay.
Even to play with kids and yeah.
Easy. So I'd also like to learn about some practices that you do to manage your own clothing.
But we mentioned a bit, of course, I read the tags. Then I avoid polyester when I don't need to. Then I like to buy from secondhand or local designers. I love to go at local designers. And what I like about it is because for me, there is a story behind the clothes. So who made it? I know the person and I know this person also has a story behind, her job, her work, the workshop she's having. So for me, it's important to encourage that. And then also when I shop, secondhand, for me, there is an excitement when I go shopping because I am going to meet something that I don't know. It's a kind of surprise, a chasse au trésor, When you go to a traditional mall, you don't have that feeling. But oh my God, and this is the only one piece, has to be the right size, in the right color. So it's a bit of luck, but I always find something. And even, my kids there, and they love it too. So this is a good way. Also, we turn, we put in bags, we bring back to the second hand, we take something else. The same with books.
Yeah, I love shopping the op shops for books because there's always very interesting things there. And I love, looking at maybe the life of a book and seeing how many, trying to guess how many times it's been read. Sometimes I open a book and I find a postcard and, from, 1997. And I love seeing that, someone read this in 1997.
Yeah. It's nice. And I don't know in Australia, but in Canada, we have these little boxes in the street and we put books and then we can take a book and then bring one. And so this is a good sharing. So I like that.
Yeah, we have those as well. I love them as well. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your practice. So we're moving on to the questions from the audience now. And we do have a few today. But just before we get into that, if you want to submit your own questions to the audience for our future guests, make sure you check our Instagram page, usually Monday or Tuesday, depending on your time zone. And just check on the stories and maybe we'll read your question out on air. So our first question from the audience is, what considerations should individuals keep in mind when choosing laundry detergents with a focus on sustainability and biodegradability?
Yeah, that's a good question. But you have to keep as simple as possible. So choose it without perfume, choose it without, many ingredients. Like we discussed about food, this parallel with food, less ingredients, the best. Of course, for example, here I have one, we talked about locality too. Like the one I buy, for example, is made in Montreal, and is sold in the shop, where, local designers sell their clothes. So there is, a kind of, life cycle, where in the shop they give birth to the clothing, but they also take care of them during the usage facility. So, and I mentioned also, using the savon de Marseille. So something very simple, like our grandmother were doing,
Yes, before maybe we started coming up with new, different chemicals. just stick with what we used to use. At least we know that we kind of know the effect it has on the environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And our second question from the audience is, what steps can household take to responsibly manage clothing at the end of its life cycle?
It depends what we hear by life cycle. Like, is it damaged, or I don't like it anymore, or, it's too small, or it's too, it's damaged. So it depends. There are different options. The easiest, is to put everything in a bag and go to the secondhand shop, charity shops. There are many in Montreal. I'm sure there are many in Melbourne too. So you give that, and most of the time you get a little reward, a little $5 or something to buy more in their shop. It helps, all the economy of these people working in this field, which is quite nice. So this is the first option. Then another option that we do a lot is the swap. And do you have that in Australia, the swap parties or the swap gatherings?
Yeah. I think we've spoken about this on other podcasts. It's where you sort of gather a group of friends and everyone brings a few pieces and you all swap.
Yes. So you have that between friends, but now you have that also in museums, like there is an exhibition and that there is the little swap corner. So you go, you bring 5 pieces, and then you can leave with 3 other 5 pieces. And then with the friends, we do it. We'll bring like drinks and snacks. And then we have a fun evening. We try clothing, and then we always find something. So this is the other options. This is the 2 options I use, actually. Yeah. Never throwing in the bin. Even if it's damaged, or I do my grandmother, I keep the really damaged pieces, to clean. Or I keep a box of damaged clothing, like jeans, even, to repair, like to do a patch. Like you have a little hole, you take a piece of another fabric, a denim or something, and you repair, you customize. And what I like about that is that, of course, your clothing is a bit damaged, but it has a story. And then, it's different, like someone, having a scar on the face, For some people it's ugly, but from others it's charming. So how can you bring charm to something that at first was broken or damaged, and makes it more special and similar?
I do have a pair of jeans that I love because I've damaged both knees and I've repaired it so many times, and I make a bit of a show of the repairs. It's very fun for me. Yeah,
me too. And I'll do that, but also I bring it, to repair, to shops to repair. And I don't know in Australia, but in France, for example, because I come from there and I follow what's going on in the terms of laws and all that, there is a new law and a little help, like money given to people to repair their clothing. So this is something that is coming more into the mind, in the spirit of making the lifespan of our clothing longer.
That's great, because I have had friends who have complained about the price of, repairers or alterations places. And I think it is partly because we devalue clothes and we also devalue craftsmanship. But by making it more, accessible for everyone, that's great, because we're still showing that craftspeople have great abilities and they should be paid for it, but also acknowledging that not everyone can afford to use these services. That's amazing. I think we should bring that to Australia.
Yeah. And there is, talking about that, one of my colleagues was, like a sewer repairing, and she was really, really angry because people didn't want to pay, $15 to change, a zip. But it takes a lot of time to change a zip, and it's costly. And the clients were saying, but I paid $15 for my trousers, but this is not normal, and like Lee Edelcourt. Do you know Lee Edelcourt? We call her the guru of trends. She started the trend studio Trend Union in 1985 in Paris. And she's always forward, in the trends, and like she's a visionary. And in 2015, she did anti-fashion manifesto. And she started to spoke like that with, that on the table, like, no, we cannot carry on like that. It's not normal that a piece of clothing that has to be grown, woven, cut and dye and travel all around the world for the price of a sandwich, there is a problem. So this kind, we have to understand more the value of the fiber, the value of the fabric. Yeah, this is not food, and it doesn't compost as food.
Yeah. Thank you. Very interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if our listeners want to find out more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's very easy. It's my name, Vanessa Mardirossian, on Instagram or on LinkedIn, both of them.
Thank you for sharing that. And we'll put those in our show notes so everyone can find you. You also mentioned some resources. So we'll also put those into our show notes so everyone can find out a bit more information about this topic.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for such an interesting conversation.
Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to On the House, produced by the Household Management Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes like this from across 10 life management perspectives can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smart devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at hm.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Gabriella Joustra. Thanks for tuning in.